To me, project management is really about expanding it outside of the deliverables and the tactical stuff of the project and expanding out to literally all of the parties that are involved is managing their expectations.
You've got a lot of projects on your plate. Projects for clients and projects for your own business. There's always more stuff to do. That's the nature of running a business. But when we talk about project management, we're usually talking about managing an individual project or a few individual projects. But in a service business, project management isn't just project management. It's really client management. Outside of the scope of an individual project or service, there are a bunch of interactions and tasks that need to be handled. Like sending a contract before you start working together, or bringing clients on board and introducing them to your team, or following up with them for a testimonial after your project is complete. For a service business, every single task and touch point, from the initial contact to the final payment, should be considered part of the project that needs to be managed. I'm Susan Bowles, and you're listening to Break the Ceiling, the show where we break down unconventional strategies you can use to save time, boost your profit, and increase your operational capacity. The rest of this month, we'll be nerding out a little bit about project management, the tools, the team members, and today, the scope. When it comes to managing projects in a client-focused business, you really need to think about the whole client process, beginning to end, as a part of your project. If you only think about the specific tasks for how you'll deliver a service, you're missing opportunities for efficiency in your workflow and the opportunity to really delight your customers. My guest today is a master at delighting her customers. You might remember Hailey Thomas from episode 12 when she came on the show to talk about her work Treat Intensives. Hailey is a business coach for online entrepreneurs and one of my very favorite friends to nerd out about project management with. Hailey comes to each of her clients with a deep appreciation for who they are as individuals. So she's really building in personalized, white glove kinds of services. With Hailey, client experience is built into every touch point. So when I was thinking about this episode, she was absolutely the person I wanted to chat about it with. Hey, Hailey, thanks so much for coming back to the show. I'm really excited to chat with you about this today.
Hey, I'm so glad to be back on. We always have such a great time chatting, so I'm excited.
Yay! So in a service business, project management isn't really just project management. It's really more client management. And you have to manage the whole client experience kind of end to end. So how does that kind of concept play out in your business?
Yeah, so first of all, I completely agree, right? In my mind, when I say project management, what I mean is like managing client and project expectations.
Yes.
That's how that's like the word switch out that goes on in my mind. And I think it starts, like you said, from the moment you meet someone and have a first interview or do like a kickoff, not even a kickoff, like when you're even just beginning to say, okay, like a sales call, basically, are we going to start working together or not? Like that's when it starts at the very beginning. And the whole process is about managing that client's expectations of what they're getting, of what the project actually is. And I'm not sure why. I think you and I are similar in that, we can see that kind of for what it is. But I think some people really struggle with, I set expectations that one time in the beginning. Why do I have to continue to do this for the rest of the project? And I mean, the answer is like, that's what it is. That's what project management is. All those tools, Trello and Basecamp and I can't even think GitFlow and all these projects, like their whole goal is to manage the expectations of everyone who is involved in the project. That's what it is. And so to me, project management is really about expanding it outside of the deliverables and the tactical stuff of the project and expanding out to literally all of the parties that are involved is managing their expectations.
I love that. And yeah, I totally agree. I think that there's something really powerful about having a very clear process and a very, very clearly communicated expectations about timeline and about how the process is going to happen, and providing information up front. You know, if clients need training, like that can all be a real competitive advantage. When you're talking about the client experience, it's really powerful to be able to present that kind of expertise, because I think you kind of only end up with that sort of process when you've done it a lot of times. But when you're very clear about what's going to happen as part of managing the client expectations, you actually can come off as more of an expert. And also, like, I know, I'm sure you've probably been in the same position. Like, if you are in a field, particularly like creatives are pretty bad for this, like deadlines or what does this project look like? Like, if you are in a field where that's not the industry standard, like you and I are in field, like we manage projects, like people expect to come to us and have a clear process. So it's probably not as much of an advantage for our kinds of businesses because of the nature of what we do. People expect us to kind of have our process together. But in a creative industry where that's not kind of the norm, that's not the expectation, I think it can be a real competitive advantage to having a clear process and knowing that you're going to meet the deadlines and meet the expectations that you say, because you set expectations up front, which is unusual.
Yeah. And I think to your point, yes, particularly in industries or industries where that is less common, it is really a competitive advantage. And I think in the beginning, some creatives or entrepreneurs that have to do the project management piece, so like if you're a designer or you're building out a website, like if that's not necessarily your strong suit, like it just is so much better for everyone involved. And it, like you said, gives you that leg up. So even if you don't fully know, like if you're newer to the craft or newer to starting your own business, even if you don't know what the outcomes are, like the things that you can actually control anyway are the deadlines, are, you know, who's supposed to be completing what, are like, it just makes for such a better product at the end of the project, and the client to have so much better of an experience with you, regardless of like what it is you're actually building out.
Yes, absolutely. So when you are working with a client, how do you approach kind of making sure that you're approaching the client experience holistically, building that into your service? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So I think it comes back to, I'm gonna go kind of like high level a little bit and drill in. I promise it'll make sense. But I go back to, like, I start with my brand, and by that I just mean like, what experience do I want people to have with me? Like, what is it that I want them to feel? And for me, the hospitality is a big piece of it. Like, clarity is a big piece of it. And there's this combo of fun and, I don't know what to call it, but like get down to businessness, like seriousness. Like there's a back and forth tension with me between like, this is going to be really fun, but like we're about to get some shit done. Like those are going to work hand in hand together. So that's the experience that I know I want people to have with me. I want them to be cared for well, and then enjoy the work we do together, but actually have some results. So from that, I boil it down to like, what does this process need to look like? So the first thing I did was build out, we've talked about, I do intensives or work treats. We've talked about when I was on the show last time, but the beginning of that process, when someone comes to me and says, hey, I think I might want to try a worksheet or a work treat, is very much about really uncovering what results they want, really uncovering like where they are going to begin and what they want this to look like at the end, like having very, very clear like words around that, or even numbers around that, which I think is super helpful. And it requires some digging. So that's mildly uncomfortable for people, but that's like, that's how you know whether or not you're hitting that mark. So that's kind of the beginning. And it is a little intense, but I like to then interject it or follow up the next communication with me with something fun and like delightful. So I can kind of play those in. So I send gifts in the mail and gift cards and like fun things in the mail to the people I work with. So it's that. And then, you know, when they come to me to do a work treat, or I go to them to do a work treat, like there's always flowers, but there's always, you know, a whiteboard and Sharpies that work really well, and extra paper and notebooks and extra, like, so basically everything about the experience ends up being pulled from my brand and how I want people to feel. And then the project management piece, again, I am tool agnostic, meaning like I don't really care what project management I tool use, which is like, I'm sure some sort of sin for a project manager, but whatever.
No, what's funny is I actually think most project managers are like, yeah, it all works the same way. I don't really care.
It does.
Everybody has a preference. I think like everybody's got a natural, if I were picking, this is the one I would pick. Mm-hmm. But they all work so similarly that I think if you are a project management person, you can figure it out.
Yeah. And so like that's whatever experience I want someone to have, that is what I drop into a project management tool. And so I kind of work from that kind of high pie in the sky, like kind of high level, and then work it down to, okay, what do those details need to look like? And then that way, when I see it in a tool, I know how to outline, like I can see it in like, okay, well, this is very serious. This is taking care of them. This is fun. So that's helpful. Let's make sure we have these pieces in place. And then when it comes to the actual work product itself, so that's, you know, the client experience. When it comes to the work product itself, like that just nestles right in there. And I can see, you know, does this fit with how I want them to experience me? Does this fit with, you know, getting to their actual results? So it's less about like picking a tool and then putting deadlines in and then going backwards. Like I go the other direction actually when I'm building out a project.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. So are there any particular like client touch points that you've found in your projects that are kind of more important or more impactful than others? Like, are there some key points that you would never, ever take out of your process because they're so useful?
So one that so in the beginning when I started doing project management work, I would like back off of this piece because I felt like uncomfortable or a little awkward with it. But like the post-mortem, so like after a project is over, doing what worked, what didn't work, what could we do better next time? And I think that was just personally for me, if a project didn't go like perfectly, I was very much like, if I bring up like what they didn't like, then they're going to say that they hate me and they'll remember that. But I also think like if my job as a project manager is to leave a client better than when I met them, then like you have to do that. Like you have to help them think through those things. And I think, again, they are better off for it. You are better off practitioner, whatever your craft is for it. And like both parties get better. So that's one thing that it's kind of like, if I feel like the project went well, then it's easy to be like, yep, we're doing a postmortem. And now I just, like I said, build it in. So that's the expectation from the jump. And I can't like back out of it.
Avoid it. Yeah. I love that part of having a really clear process. Is you're like, I don't want to do this, but it's there on the checklist. So I will.
Exactly. And so it keeps, that's, again, I think project management is such a beautiful thing because it really like keeps emotion out of things, if that makes sense. Like it keeps you from, having whatever feelings you're having. Well, you've already set this expectation with your client and with yourself. So you're going to do that thing next. The other thing that I think is super important that I don't think a lot of people do really well, and I kind of alluded to in the beginning, was having a really, really strong kickoff, like a very, very strong kickoff, and asking more questions than you think is necessary, because like that's the beginning. And you just uncover so many things. So like even I've had sales calls where we thought we were building X, Y, and Z, and then we go to do kickoff and I'm talking to, the one developer who's going to be on the team. Even in very small teams or large teams, we actually get to talking about, okay, we're kicking off this project and here are the 20 questions that I'm asking. Then the project morphs and becomes something different. And so without a really strong kickoff, like you're going to build the wrong thing, or you're going to be approaching this in a way that the client didn't, like maybe they didn't feel comfortable telling you, or they were confused in their own mind about what this project needed to be. So in my kickoff, I ask questions, and I hopefully maybe I can pull up my sheet, but because I've got a template for myself, and it's everything from like, okay, what is this supposed to solve, to what else have you tried to solve this, so we know like what's probably not going to work, to when are you available, and who on the team is available via Slack, email, or calls are best. What do you expect from me in terms of weekly communication? Do you want an email or a call? I need logins for everything.
That's the worst part.
It's the worst part, but I make people do it with me on the phone because later they will not do it.
They won't do it.
They won't do it. And so it's just having that really strong kickoff too is so And I can tell there's like a point, like probably 45 minutes in, when my clients can be like, are we done yet? Like, how many more questions do you have? But I'm like, unless you want to have this conversation with me again next week and then another 30-minute one again the following week because I didn't get what I needed, like, let's just do it.
And yeah, I have a very similar process with kind of my intro project where it's, yeah, you fill out a really long questionnaire and you give me access to the stuff that I need access to. And then we get on a call and I spend 2 hours asking you more questions.
More questions.
And asking you difficult questions like, why? Why are you doing that? Which I always find to be the most difficult question for people to answer.
And so fascinating. Like, it's so fascinating because I think, too, that's when you can... Again, this is another touch point to manage that person's expectations, because if you are like Susan, you did a lot of software implementation in the past, and you're a CFO, right? So like you deal with people's money all the time. Yeah. So especially with money, like I think people give really interesting answers for why they're trying a project, because maybe they think it's going to be like the silver bullet that's going to fix everything. And so that's a really good time to reset expectations before you get to the end of the project and they're like, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. Well, it wasn't supposed to. It wasn't magically fix everything.
You didn't say that you wanted that. I have found that was like one question that I added probably in a later iteration of like my onboarding was like, what does success for this project look like for you? That I found was so useful for giving me a good handle on what are they expecting, so that I am better equipped to meet the expectations or to level set and be like, hey, that's not going to happen. That's not what this thing is going to do. Or that might happen in a year. Like that's going to take us a year to get there.
Which I think early on in my, client working with clients and project management, like I felt horrible having to say to a client, like, your expectations are unrealistic or like, this is going to happen. We're going to work on this project and you're not going to see returns on it for 6 months because it takes that long to like, let this, if it's a marketing piece that I did a lot of marketing projects early on, like that's just how long it's going to take us to get results and to really like test this very, very thoroughly and see how it goes. And so that was hard. And so I just like wouldn't say it. But like, that's again, the great thing about having a process for managing projects is that like you can build in like, this is the point in which I tell the client whether or not expectations are, that we can meet them or whatever. Like you can build it in. So it's not on you to decide, right? It's already written into the project plan. So you just follow the plan.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And there's two, and I guess I should clarify when I'm talking about project plans, there's two projects in my mind when I'm working with a client. One is my own internal project for them. So I have a whole, like, they don't see the checklist of like, did I send them a cute gift? Did they get, like, they don't see that checklist. And then there's a separate project plan for like the work itself, the work product. Yes. And so for my list on there would be like, our expectations are correct, our expectations set well, ? Send them an email either way, or make sure this comes up in this conversation either way. And I just can follow my little list. Yeah.
I love that. So when you are working with a client, how do you approach that work? Are there certain phases that you break into kind of mini projects? Do you have phases? How are you approaching kind of managing all those little different aspects of client management?
So I break the phases into 3 parts for me. One is like kind of a big fat phase I call initiation. Well, okay, so there's really 5 phases, but that's a project manager spoken at their truest. But there's like an initiation piece, which is like around the sales conversation. There's kickoff, which is exactly what it sounds like, kickoff. And then there's this whole middle section. That's kind of 2 sections, but the middle section is like managing expectations during the project, and then just like managing the project itself. So deadlines and budgets and money and all those things. And then there's like the end or the closing of a project. And so each of them has a different goal, or each of them has a different, like, this is where I'm putting my focus. And I think what's interesting now that I'm saying this out loud is that while whatever we're building is obviously important and what they're paying me for, like I spend a lot of time on the front end and on the back end managing the client. Like that's like the main thing for me. And I mean, we can have a whole psychological discussion about it, but
for all, like if you work with clients, that's probably true. Like,
yeah,
there's so much communication that needs to go around what they're doing. And depending on what kind of work you do, there's a whole bunch of like mindset stuff that goes along with that. You know, for you, you're looking at people who are like trying to do some big project. Like they're trying to actually do something that's going to level up their business or require some sort of shift. And likewise for me, you know, I'm working with clients that are at a growth inflection point, and we have to get through that, and we have to get through and overcome any like money mindset stuff that might come up. And I'm sure you have similar pieces where I think a lot of people that work with clients, you know, at some point whatever their hangups are going to come into play. And part of managing the project is managing those hurdles with them.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a minute, because I think that's a thing that doesn't get talked about a lot in project management, and that is like the coaching of the client, right? Like that's the other thing. You're setting expectations with the client so they know truly what to expect at each phase, and then, you know, when you're finished working together, what they'll be left with. But part of your job is to coach a client through that process. So like when you're in the sales phase, you know, and having these beginning conversations, like some of that is coaching them on their own belief in themselves to be this new person, right? So if they're doing these projects, it's with the expectation that it's going to level up their business and level up them as a CEO. And so like your job is to help them really believe in that new vision of themselves so that they can invest with you. Yeah, they can invest with you and like, you know, do the work that's required to get there, because it's not super fun to like have these, some of these projects just aren't that fun. Let's be honest.
It's so fun to come up with the projects though.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so fun. And like being able to coach them through that and in the beginning phases and initiation and in kickoff, like that really is going to help them stick with it in the middle phase when it's like, well, this is stupid and I don't want to do this anymore. Which people don't ever say that. They just are suddenly, quote unquote, very busy.
Yes. Yes.
To work on your thing.
This was very important to me until it's hard and boring.
So like being very good at the coaching aspect is super important. And then the same thing is like when you bring on, if you're working with somebody that has a team, right? Like one of your jobs is to get buy-in from these other people who have a regular full-time job with this company, but like now you're asking for their time and asking for their resources to build this new thing that may or may not directly impact them. So part of your job is to like coach them through like, what does this mean? What is this going to mean for your role? You know, how can I make this easy for you? Getting them excited about that vision too it's part of the job.
Yeah. And I think you're right. I think that part of like, I think that's something that's there for project managers, you know, people where that's their core, that's what they do. Because especially for like software consulting projects, like that's that whole change management piece is so critical to the success of the project, more so probably than the technical details of like how you're setting this up, like getting people to buy in on the fact that this thing is going to help them and not be just another pain in the ass thing that they got to switch to and learn. And like that's such a huge piece of it. But I think for a lot of folks who may not necessarily be like project manager or operations manager type people, I think that's a piece that gets missed so frequently. And the communication that is involved in that is just such a critical piece of the success of any like big project. Yeah.
And to me, that's like, first of all, just shout out to all customer service developers, just all the teams that when the CEO walks in with me or, you know, we get on a call with me and they're just like, what in the actual hell are we doing here? I'm so sorry. I love you. Everybody's great. But yeah, like that is going to make or break how this project goes, to be honest.
Yeah,
like whether or not people are really bought in and can stay bought in, like that's what's going to make this go or not, truly.
No, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Yeah. Especially like the bigger the project, the more critical that piece is.
And I think too, like that's so even if project management isn't your main thing, I think just super practically after calls, I make it a point, or either right when a call is ending and maybe it's me and somebody who isn't the main person on the project. So like if it's CEO, the CEO, like a tech person and a customer service person, and I bring those two parts in because those are the people who are usually most affected by stuff that I'm changing. Like before, like I just chat with them, like literally ask how they are, ask what they're working on, ask what they're excited about. And I am I use humor a lot to like deflect and kind of help massage conversations. And so I'm like, kind of to make a lot of jokes about like, yeah, listen, it's okay if you hate me. I'll send you donuts every week for the next 6 weeks, but how can we make this work? Like, you know what I mean? So like being kind and gracious and just trying to make it fun and I guess find ways to bring to the light to these people that like, yes, I understand that this is costing you time and resources, but it is so worth it. And I'm so grateful for your help. Like that goes a really long way.
Yeah. And I also, as you were talking about that, thought about being also very respectful of those people's time. The fact that they do have full-time jobs and that they have to take time out to participate in this project or to help give you information that you need or produce assets or whatever it is. By having a really clear process and being very clear with them about like, here's what I need you to do. And here's your piece of the pie, I think is part of that being kind and gracious and where process can again be so powerful. Having a clear, straightforward, whatever it is that you're doing, is part of that, I think.
Yeah. 'Cause you can ask, I mean, we've all had people request things of us, right? That are like, well, I kind of need this thing and I'm not sure when I need it by. And, oh, I also need this additional thing. Like that's annoying. That's super annoying for someone to ask of you. And so don't go to anybody like that. Like be very clear about what you need. And like you said, Susan, like this is what I need from you. Here's your piece of the pie. This is exactly what it is. Help me help you with that.
Yes. I love that. Help me help you.
Help me help you.
So we talked a little earlier this year about your work treats in episode 12, and you were kind of in the early stages of those. Can you talk me through a little bit about what that process looks for you, like on your end? What does that look like?
Oh goodness. Okay. So
and don't be afraid to get super nitty gritty. I love that stuff.
Yes. Okay. So basically when someone says they want to have a work treat, the first thing we do is a sales call. And it's basically on the call. My job is to get them to a decision. So on the call, I don't want it to end and then be like, well, I'm still not sure. It's either yes, you need this right now, or no, you do not need this right now. And we'll just keep in touch until you do. So that's like the first conversation. And it's a lot of the why and what for and what purpose does this serve in your business and all that stuff. So that's the first conversation. I always follow up with an email just to like, hey, you're great. That's a lot of like the communication for me is just like, I want you to know that you're fantastic. Just a heads up. So from then, if they decide to do one, I need at least 3 weeks, at least 2.5 weeks, but 3 to 4 weeks is ideal. And we do during that time for the client, what they will see is a few, we'll have a few coaching calls and a few very like technical, what are you building? What do you want to get out of it? Here's the initial schedule. So I've got a template which I guess I can share with you if that's useful with your audience. I have a download because it's called like, what the heck is a work treat? And there is a template of like what this might look like, right? So like if you come in at this time, we'll work on this section first and that section second, and then we'll have lunch and then we'll do this. So it's very like already blocked out. And at that beginning point, we're really just seeing what is priority and how might we block that out and who do we need to like get in and get it done. So the first 2 or 3 conversations are really, really blocking out details. On the back end, what I'm doing is finding out like, what do they like to do and what kind of food do they like to eat? Are they vegan? Like, I've been wanting to host more work treats here in my hometown. So like I'm booking their flights. I'm finding them, the hotel that they're going to stay at. Like I'm making sure my favorite restaurants have openings for us. I'm making sure like just basically that this experience is going to be a really incredible experience for them. So it's very like custom in that way. So I kind of do some, nerdy online profile from finding out like what kind of sports teams do they like and do they drink beer and all this kind of stuff, which I enjoy quite a bit. So anyway, so those two things are happening simultaneously. And then we get to the work treat. They come in. I pick them up and we basically go get to work. So they come and I already have our co-working space set up. And again, I have a checklist for that, surprise. But it's, we have a whiteboard, we have lots of extra notebooks. We have, I've got these giant Post-it notes that are like 3 feet by 3 feet. So we can literally just be like posting things everywhere. The space is ready for collaboration. And then we literally dive in. So I have a work treat facilitator, as I call her. Shout out to Mel, my facilitator. But she's with me, and her whole job is to keep time, to make sure we're wrapping up each section, to say hey, it's time for a stretch break. It's almost time for our lunch reservation, so we need to head out the door. She takes notes and drops them in. Oh, that's the other thing. So I use Notion quite a bit, and Notion, GitFlow. What else do I use? Google Docs, honestly. Whatever we've decided to use with that client. Again, beforehand, Mel and I will have blocked everything out. So it's literally you come and it's plug and play. And so she's taking notes while we're going. So we do that and eat and hang out and go for walks and probably go bowling or something fun for 3 days. And then the follow-up is super important. So for me, at that point, I'm exhausted because it's been 3 days of very intense work. But right after, we try to send a follow-up communication saying, we got this far in each of these projects that you brought, because sometimes it's a series of small projects, sometimes it's a large project. But we got this far. Here are the next steps for each of them. This is when we're meeting next. What questions do you have for me at this point? So that's just a written, an email communication. And then there's it usually happens over 6 weeks, but 3 to 4 calls that are follow-up and implementation and just helping them to do
are you doing these things? Yeah.
And if you're not, let's talk about troubleshooting. So those calls feel more like coaching calls than maybe necessarily before. It was very tactical and, how are we going to do this?
Here's how we're going to do this thing.
Yeah. And those calls are okay, so if you're not doing them, what do we need to fix? Does this still make sense in your business? Has anything changed in your business? So sorry if that was a very long answer.
No, I love that. I think that was really good.
So blocked out at this point that and I think that's what makes it valuable, is that you literally can just plug your stuff in and we do all of the things.
Yeah. So on your end, you have checklists that you're using for basically every part of this process. Yes, is that?
Yeah. Yep.
So you've kind of templatized everything, and you're filling in their specific project or their specific idea. And then at the end, is there a deliverable? Are you delivering something to them?
Yeah.
Are you putting that in there? Does it go in their project management software? What does it look like for them to figure out what to execute next?
So typically we're working within whatever tool they already have set up. So when I go to drop in my the schedule or where the actual tasks are going to live, like I said, I typically use Notion and a mix of Notion, Google Docs, and Flow. But if they have their own thing, then we'll just work out of their tools. But all of the actual work product lives within their stuff as is. So when we finish each and every section, during the actual work treat, the last question is, okay, we finished here. Let's just literally takes 30 seconds, recap what we just worked on. What are the next 1, 2, 3 steps? And that gets written down in that section on the calendar. I wish I could show you what it looks like on the calendar in Notion. And it literally is, we worked on blah, 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 blah. The next steps are call this person, set this meeting up with the developer, and do 1, 2, 3. So basically they end up having that ready. In terms of what we're doing is the actual work on it. So sometimes when people come, I'll give you an example. Someone did a work treat in January of 2020 this year, and they wanted to roll out this new offering. And so one of the sessions was just strategy. We were just a lot of talking, a lot of whiteboarding. And what we ended up with as a deliverable was a 1-pager. So well, how would you explain this to someone if you wanted to hand this off or go sell this right now? This is the one pager you would give them. So that was like the deliverable, and it was done. The next steps are really about like selling it. Like, okay, let's identify 3 people you can go talk to right now. You're going to write 2 LinkedIn posts about it and something else. I forgot what that third thing was. So that one was smaller and kind of contained, I guess. There are other pieces that people will bring that are a larger part of a project. So another person wanted to do a like special giveaway for this an offering that they had. And so we actually had like 2 or 3 sections that were about that sessions. And one of our outcomes was a bunch of copy, like new website copy, a sales page copy for that. Another outcome was the actual connecting of whatever giveaway tool they were using, like make sure Instagram is set up with their email, with the landing page, and then making sure the landing page was connected with their email provider and that the proper tags were set up. So that was very much like we were all sitting there quietly, just like clicking around and asking questions.
Doing the thing.
You're just doing the thing. Yeah. So then the outcome of that when we were done was like, okay, this is all set up. Or I think she needed to run the giveaway guidelines by her lawyer. And so like that was her next steps, was to just make sure this was right. And then she's got a favorite copywriter she likes to work with. So pass this to your copywriter now to massage and make sound more like you. So the deliverables are really like, this is about massive progress on whatever it is that you bring to us. And my background is varied and very like it's operations, it's a little bit of marketing, but I'm really good at like executing. So whoever I need to bring in or to call or we need to talk to beforehand, like we're going to do those things. And then like when you get here, it's time to like work, like we're doing the work.
Yeah. Awesome. Mm-hmm. So what else haven't we talked about that you think that we should about client management or project management?
I love it when you ask that question.
I know it's so hard, right? Where you're like, all of the things.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, we talked about the role that this plays in people who are project managers or operations type folks, businesses, and then people who aren't. We talked a little bit about that. I guess I just want to drive home the point that project management can feel really like a lot. Like it can feel like so much to take in at once, and like, well, I need to go set up an onboarding process and and do all of this, and like it really doesn't have to be. Like you don't need to go get certified in project management right now. Like it really doesn't have to be. I guess I would suggest for the person who's listening to this, that's like, this is something that I know is going to help support me and support my business and support my clients, which that's what it's supposed to be. Its job of project management is just to support everyone in what they need. Then my suggestion would be just to like map out what your process is now as is, and then just pick like 1 or 2 things to adjust, and then just kind of keep making slow adjustments. Like the plan I have for work treats and for my client interactions has been built over the last 2.5 years. So it's not like, well, I did offer project management services early on, but like even then, like I look back at that 2.5 years ago and like, ugh, that was ugly. Like that was,
absolutely,
not clean and pretty and nice and whatever. So like be fine with it being messy. And the only way to really build this out is to just start doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. My process, in terms of like project management and client delivery process has definitely evolved like that. At the beginning, it was just like, here's a few things. Here's a standard like onboarding email.
Yeah.
And then the next piece was like, okay, here's a standard onboarding email and the client folders.
Yes.
And it was just like one little piece. And, when I had an hour or I had a half hour, that task would be there to like go clean up this next piece. Or if I had a particular client where I ran into an issue, like there's always, you fix one issue where you're like, okay, this happened, that wasn't good. When you're when you're doing your, hot washes afterwards, you're like, that did not work well. What can I put in place so that thing doesn't happen again? And you put something in place so that specific situation doesn't happen again. You add another clause to your contract, or you're more explicit in your onboarding documentation, or whatever it is. You add another piece to the process, but then something else pops up, You fixed that one thing, but the next thing will happen.
And yeah, and I think that's just the point, is that this is like ever evolving and you're ever growing in your project management efforts. But this is so important to me because I truly think it creates a better experience for your client. It makes you a better practitioner, and it makes your work product that much better. Like, I truly believe that it makes all three of those pieces so much better. I did want to share one story about how really bad my my project management was in the beginning. So like,
yes,
even in the beginning, I had this like, I love hospitality. Like, I want people to have a great time. So let me build this in. But I was so nervous about adding that part because I thought people really just expected me to like, you're a project manager. So it's very drill sergeant and very like, kind of what it looked like in corporate was very buttoned up. And so I felt so uncomfortable with adding my own flavor to project management and to client management that the first gift I sent was, I had a client who was local with me. And so what I did was like put these like gift cards in this box and this cute note. And then the box was like in this unmarked brown box. And I just like brought it to their office. And just the first person I saw, I was like, give this to the CEO. And like their name wasn't on it. There wasn't any like thing from me on it, like my name wasn't on it. And then like 2 days later, the CEO was like, oh, I found this thing on my desk, did you give this to us? And I was like, oh yeah, I guess I did. And it was so awkward. Oh God, it was so awkward. But I was so uncomfortable with making the process my own and like owning that this is what this meant to me. And gosh, it was super awkward and bad. And they were like, thank you. How long has this been sitting on my desk? Like, who dropped it there? Could have been a bomb threat. They didn't know. Like why did I do that? So anyway, that's just for fun and for chuckles. Like, it's not going to be pretty.
Love that because it's like, yeah, at the core of it, it's like even at the beginning, you were trying to be you.
Right.
But when you are doing something that's out of the box or unconventional, it takes some time, I think, to be comfortable with accepting that you're just going to be different and that it's not bad, that it's actually like the best thing about you is that you are weird in this specific way. Like, that's the coolest thing about working with you. But at the beginning, it can be so hard to just give yourself permission to kind of draw outside the lines a little bit there.
Yeah, it was. And the funny thing is I'm like very good friends with this guy and his wife now. And it's a thing we talk about still.
I love that.
So yeah, anyway. But yeah, that's project management's great. And everyone should spend time. I really do think everyone should spend time figuring out how to incorporate more of it into their business so that it supports them and their businesses more.
Oh, I love that. So where can our listeners find you if they want to connect or learn more about you?
Yes, you can always find me on LinkedIn. That's where I hang out. I'm Hailey Thomas. And the other thing I'm excited about that is probably people are more excited about than being on LinkedIn is I'm rebranding my podcast and relaunching it. I have an episode with you, Susan.
Yeah,
it's
you guys should
great.
Totally listen because you have very cool people on your podcast.
Very cool people on my show, but I'm rebranding it to be called 1 year from now. So it's a bunch of conversations with entrepreneurs about what they are anticipating for their work and what they're excited about for their work and their lives a year from now. I've got some fun coaching. I'm calling them tiny transformations as one of the segments of just stuff entrepreneurs should be thinking about and need to kind of shift within themselves to continue to make progress in their journey to accomplishing what they want for themselves a year from now. So,
oh, I love that. Mm-hmm. I am so excited to listen to the new version of the show too.
Yay! And I'm
so everybody go listen to it because if you like me, you're gonna like Hailey.
Yes, we are kindred spirits, so Absolutely. It's just an extension of the show. So,
well, thank you so much for being here today, and I just really appreciate. I always love it when you're on the show.
Thank you. I had so much fun. Thank you so much, Susan.
There are so many opportunities to create joy in the client experience. And what you do with that in your own business is really only limited by your imagination. There's no right or wrong answers here. But whatever you decide to do, build it into your process. Make it part of how you deliver each service. Consider it part of your management of that project. Hailey and her work treats are a perfect example of that. She considers the emotional burden of what the client will be going through during such an intensive project and builds in rest time, relaxation time, pampering time into her project, even though that's not technically the service she's delivering. But she's thinking about the whole client experience and how she can truly deliver what her client needs and build that into her service and her project management. So how can you take that idea and apply it in your own business? Well, hopefully this conversation with Hailey helps you start thinking about what parts of your client experience are currently missing from your own project management process. And if you're thinking about how to make your business model resilient, efficient, and financially stable right now, you are not alone. Up until a few weeks ago, the conversations I had about examining your money and smoothing out your operating systems were all about growth. My clients and I looked at how they could set themselves up for success as they onboarded more clients and watched their bank accounts grow. But now I'm having a lot more conversations about stability. Business owners like you are asking how to weather uncertainty while setting the stage for sustainable growth over time. The good news? The work is the same. The work you've been doing or thinking about doing to prepare your business for growth is the same work you need to do to shore up your foundations when things are tight. I'd love to help you run a leaner, more efficient, more resilient business that allows you to save money while maintaining profitability. In just 1 week, I'll create your custom action plan for navigating uncertainty beyond that financial padding you keep in the bank. I'll share my recommendations for your finances, people, client management, operations, software, and more. Want to find out more? Go to scalespark.co/action plan or shoot me an email at susan@scalespark.co to schedule a free call today. Next week, we're talking project management tech. I'll be talking to Marie Poulin and Layla Pomper, two of my favorite tech geeks, about project management software, specifically Notion and ClickUp. So if you've been hanging out there in the online ecosystem, hearing the hype about those tools, and wondering if you should take the plunge, definitely hit subscribe in your favorite podcast player so you don't miss the episode. Break the Ceiling is produced by Yellow House Media. Our production coordinator is Sean McMullen. This episode was edited by Marty Seefeld with production assistance by Kristen Runbeck.